All right.
Welcome
back to the Hot Mess Mountain Mamas.
Yes. Hold on to your cups of coffee. And
they're spiced.
Yeah.
So you know what that means.
Yeah. Spiced with pumpkin spice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not bourbon.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point to make. Maybe we actually need the bourbon for this episode.
Yeah. So hold on to your hats.
Yep. We might get a little spicy.
We might be a little salty and spicy today. You might, I don't know if we need a trigger warning.
Sure tastes good, though.
If you are triggered, I can't help you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Then unfollow. It'll be okay.
Unfollow. I mean,
okay.
We will be.
What of our 86?
86. Yeah.
We'll lose everybody except for our moms.
Our moms are like, well, I was going to unsubscribe, but
I saw you lost everybody.
You're still my daughter, I guess.
Yeah. And of course, probably at this point, people are like, would you just spit it out already?
Yeah, they're like, what do you got? And no, because you build it up and then you're like, oh, it wasn't that much.
Yeah, it really is not that big of a deal.
And they're like, what? All that build up for that? No.
Yeah.
But I mean, we don't like lay out exactly how the conversation's going to go.
No.
So I'm just telling you ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. It might get a little spicy or salty.
You might,
maybe.
Yeah.
Depending on how the Lord leads.
Yeah. If he's feeling, salty right now. So
what we want to bring up,
yeah,
is the fact that there's more war happening,
mm-hmm.
and for us, this war is a little more, I guess, hits closer to home in a way, like in our hearts and our minds. It definitely hits more close to home. Obviously, physical location does not,
right?
But for us, this war in Israel does mean a lot to us as believers,
right?
Because that is where our Lord and Savior was born and raised and did his ministry and died and rose again. Mm-hmm. And that part of the world has always been in turmoil and conflict.
Right.
Let's not joke anybody
from
about
Adam
this.
and Eve.
Right. From Adam, like Mesopotamia area,
yeah,
to the east of Israel. Okay. The Tigris and the Euphrates. Okay. Those two, that's basically a lot of people point to, that's where life originated.
Right.
So that would make a lot of sense. Why there's so much turmoil there.
Right. Yes. And a lot of big religious feelings and beliefs and emotional feelings, beliefs and political powers that are, at war with each other, both figuratively and literally.
Yes.
Because, and spiritually at war, starting with all the way back to Adam and Eve and Satan.
Yep.
Wanting to have his place in this world. Yep. And then of course, Abraham having illegitimate, a child that was his and an illegitimate child, and their people groups that split from there being at war with each other, right? So, so, that it's like when you talk about, rival families or sparring family, in Israel, really
that's really what's happening. Because you look seriously, Esau and Jacob and Esau.
Ishmael.
I know.
Yeah, Jacob and Ishmael.
So, you have Isaac and Ishmael. Okay, so Ishmael was the product of Abraham and Sarah taking things into their own hands. God was like, I'm going to build a nation from you, Abraham. And they waited until they were 199.
And then she was like, I don't think God's going to really do this thing.
Yeah. So Sarah's like, here, have my maid and have a baby with her.
And then Abraham was like, sweet, okay.
I know. Seriously, you guys, go read the Bible. If you've never read the Bible, okay, go read the Bible. There is some messed up stuff in there that's drama, soap opera worthy.
Drama, soap opera. Yeah. So then Hagar has Ishmael.
Right.
And
everything's fine.
And everything's cool. Fine. And then
Sarah gets
mad because then she gets jealous.
Yeah.
And
But
then
you are the
Abraham's
one.
like, oh, I mean,
You told me to do
told
it,
me
Sarah.
to sleep with the servant.
She's still your servant, so do whatever you want with her.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
that's essentially,
Abraham,
and it's like
thanks.
Abraham, she technically is now your wife too, because.
Yeah. So there's
So.
this conflict.
Yep.
And
So Sarah kicks her out with her child.
Yeah. And then God does take care of
God
Ishmael
takes care of them.
and Hagar.
Yeah. The Bible
Wait,
says
is it
he had.
Hagar? No. Wait a minute. Is that
Yeah.
the right person?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Sarah and Hagar.
Okay. All of a sudden I was like getting my Bible people mixed up in my
I know.
brain. I was
Yeah.
like, wait.
Well, now I'm doubting too. Soap opera.
Woo! Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, the point is that
God still came in and took care of her. He provided
Right.
for her. He provided for, even though they have technically been kicked out of Abraham's household. And so then Isaac is born, and then Isaac has
Jacob
and Esau, and
But
now
these lineages have
Right.
these conflicts sort of built into them.
right, and brothers
Yeah.
fighting against
Yeah.
each other. So really, I kind of feel like all the people in the Middle East are technically related to each other.
So yeah,
It's
if
like
you go back
Hatfields.
far enough, if you go back
It's
far
like
enough.
Hatfields and McCoys, like you were saying.
Yeah,
so-
I couldn't think of that. I was like,
I know, I
that's what's
couldn't
coming
either.
to mind. I'm like the feuding family.
Yes.
But yeah, so I mean, if you go back far enough in history, it sort of starts. The lineages start with conflict,
Right.
and that conflict is never really resolved.
Yep.
Jacob and Esau do sort of make up, like, at some point. But
Right.
you've got like these families that are really big that spread from from Ishmael and Isaac, and essentially, and I don't. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall reading like, oh, they made up and they're fine now.
No,
There's
he,
not a
he
point-
just went off and made his own country. But
Right,
who
he made
knows
his own
what was
nation.
passed down? Like the
Yeah.
stories that were passed down, and then the bitterness that is still within those families that have just been held on to for years and years and years of like,
And eventually
hate
they
this-
grew into nations, but
Right.
this animosity for each other was still there.
right, it's still there. So it's rough and it's tough, partly too because of the fact that you can see throughout all of history,
Yeah.
really, the Jews have been like, people have tried to wipe the Jews off the face
Yeah.
of the planet
Yeah.
for pretty much all of history.
And yeah.
And so it's actually remarkable that they're still around as a people group.
Right. Because they're not that big of a people group.
No.
I mean, really. Like,
Right.
they're spread out. But like,
Yeah,
if you
I mean,
look
now
at,
a lot of us have
yeah.
have a lot. Like I have Jewish blood, like where
Yeah.
I'm descendant from Jews.
Yeah, okay.
But it's like there are a lot of people that are like that because during the Holocaust, during that time period, yeah, it's like all of a sudden they had to scatter, and they were scattered even before that.
Yeah.
So
And their land isn't really that huge. Like the piece of land that is
Right.
at war, that is being fought over, or where that animosity really is rooted in,
Right.
as far as like just a geographical location, isn't
Right.
that big of a
right,
land mass.
right,
But there's a lot of tensions there that have a lot of history behind them.
yeah, a lot of history because there's a lot of religious groups that have come in
Yeah.
even before because it was Israel. And then it wasn't because it was taken over. It was occupied by other countries.
Yeah.
And so as that progressed, then other countries built their own religious temples and buildings on it. Even though it was originally, like, whenever you read the Bible, it was originally set aside for the Israelites.
Right, and they
So-
want to have their land, and they are God's people. Like I had someone had said to me once, like, why do Christians even care? Like, why are they so
Why do we care?
concerned with like the Jewish people in Israel? And I'm like, where to even begin?
I know.
Like, there are faith lineage. Like, yes,
Right,
we split
right.
off and have different belief systems around who Jesus is.
Right.
But like our history of faith is
Started
Jewish.
there. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Because God used them as the picture of how much he loves us.
Right. And
which is why I go, they're still alive.
Yeah.
They're still here. That should tell you something.
yeah. Right.
Like,
And God has done amazing things to kind of protect that the people group over years.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of hardship
Yeah.
and a lot of sorrow
Yep.
that they have faced, and have a lot of persecution. And I mean, even like obviously the big one is the Holocaust, but like that isn't the only
yeah.
or that's the big one we think of, like, but that's not the only time in history. Like you said, it's been like over and over again. And in the Bible, we read that sometimes God allowed that as a way to get their attention. But as we go through history, we see that God continues to love and pursue his people.
Yeah.
And we care about that as Christians. We care about that. We care about them as people. We care about their faith walk, and we care about their relationship with God. We just like we care about our relationship with God. Like we want to see them prosper and be blessed.
Right.
And we. I mean, but like we feel that like that they're being God's people first and foremost is important and significant.
Yeah.
And God said, like in the Bible, it says like he is never going to be done pursuing them, you know.
Yes.
And so like we care about that, right? Like we want to see that happen. And so we don't agree about Jesus, but we do care about the people, and we do believe that they're important to God and to God's story that he's forming with life and humanity.
Right.
So it does matter, and
definitely matters.
And it matters to us, you know. And so
and to a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people.
And even people who are not believers, I know that it matters to them the atrocities that the Israelites have suffered, or the
Jewish people
have suffered.
I'm like, oh no! All of a sudden, you're like, "What? Am I using the right terminology
I know,
right here? I don't know. I'm like second guessing everything in my life." But yeah, I mean, you know, so it matters. So then, when you see these atrocities happening, like we're seeing in mass scale right now, it definitely. It's like pulls at your heart. It's concerning. It's scary.
Yeah.
And I'm a total Gentile. Like I don't have an ounce of Jewish blood in me at all. Like I'm just
Gentile.
Gentile dog. But
can eat my crumbs.
Yes. Throw me your crumbs. I'm so thankful for the way that God has pursued his chosen people, and for the story, like what we learn about who God is through reading how God has pursued them and chased after them and continued to like welcome them back. I mean, that's like, even if they've like gotten off course. And so that tells us really about the God that we serve, the God that we love. And that like is so, like the Old Testament is so important, you know, to our faith. And I wouldn't be, you know, like we speak of Gentiles as being adopted in because, you know, we weren't God's initial people.
Right.
And I'm so thankful that I serve a God who loves us enough to be like, I do care about all of the people of the world.
Yeah.
Like all of them.
Well, and that's what the stories even of when Jesus walked this earth and ministered and healed people, like, you know, the stories of, you know, the Gentile woman coming and being like, come heal my child, heal my child. And he initially was like, and I think, and it's funny because I look at this, I'm like, he wasn't doing this to be mean to her. He was doing this to prove a point to the other Jews that were there. Because he turned to her and he was like, well, why would I help you? You're a Gentile. Like he wasn't doing that to be mean. He was doing it because he had a crowd of Jews, scribes and Pharisees standing there.
Yeah.
And she was like, and I loved her response because you could tell her she had faith more than any of those other people there. Because she was like, well, even the dogs get the crumbs.
Yeah.
And you could tell it's like immediately it's just so beautiful because you can almost visually see Jesus just softening.
Yeah.
And being like, oh,
Yeah,
Yes.
even the
You have more
dogs eat the
faith.
crumbs under the master's table.
Yes.
You know, and it's
Yes.
like,
And he was like, yes, look at you. You have more faith than anybody else here.
yeah,
Your child is healed.
Yeah.
Go.
yeah,
And it's just like that story to me. And so I think that is something really good to remember. That we don't serve a God that's necessarily out to like kill people, even people who have done horrible atrocities. We have a God who wants to give second chances. Now, if there does come a point though where I do think the justice of God does come out, and you do see it, where there's deliberate, like I'm thinking of the sin of Achan, where they had idols in their camp. This is when they were wandering around in the wilderness.
Yes.
Because they didn't have faith to just go in and take their land. They were terrified.
Yeah.
Even though they had God who just parted the sea.
Yeah. They could have just gone straight over there to the promised land, but they got all
freaked out.
So then God was like, I guess we could wander around the desert for 40 years.
He's like, just so you can learn to trust me.
Yeah. And then they were like, oh yeah, let's do that. I mean,
and then complain and grumble.
You just walked across the Red Sea.
It totally baffles my mind sometimes. Whenever I'm like, do you not remember and see it? But I would have been the same.
But it's so like, it boggles my brain too when you actually start to look at the map and the Red Sea and you start to like look at like, you're like, wait, what? Like this was no small feat.
Right.
So
this wasn't a little stream.
Yeah.
This wasn't like the Lake Fork.
Right. They were like, oh, it got, blocked upstream somewhere.
Yeah, it wasn't even like the Mississippi.
You should definitely research that more. Like just some of the secular, like archaeologists and stuff when they're trying to like, well, maybe like they're trying to
maybe
surmise,
there was
like,
a landmass.
Yeah, like and then there was like an earthquake or something, and then like that stopped it up river, but then like it can't but they're like really.
But even in that takes a lot of faith to believe that.
Yeah, because you're looking at it and you're like, but this is a massive body of water.
Yep. Yeah.
Like it's like I think something like a mile wide that they crossed.
Yes.
So it was
an all-day ordeal.
Yeah. So then you're like with your, because it's a huge number of people. And then you're talking about getting like a mile. Like, in the movies, they always dramatize it where they're like running really fast across this like span, and they're like, the water's coming. Like, no, it couldn't have been like that because it was just
feeding their animals across.
They're like, come on, you guys. Yeah. Everybody run. The mom with the toddler's like, no problem. I totally run 1 mile with this 40 wiggly pounds in my hands. So easy. I do this every day. Like, like really, like it was and then they had like animals, like thousands of animals to get across. Like this was not a fast thing.
No.
So this water was held up for a very a long time.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting when you start to think about like you look at the history, but then you look at how God like really has come through and you just look at all the pieces of like how he's continued. And yeah, they wandered around for 40 years because of lack of faith. But he didn't like leave them. And I think that's the thing is like Israel he has not left Israel yet. Even still. Like he's still there, he's still present. Miracles are still happening, even in the midst of atrocities. And that is not to like minimize at all the atrocities because it's horrible.
Yeah.
But I think like to know that God shows up anyway is a piece of hope that we can hang on to.
Yeah.
Because life is riddled with really horrible things and stressful things and really tragic things because we live in a broken world. And we're broken people. So, and some people choose to pursue evil.
Yes.
And when you choose to pursue evil, evil comes of that, right? Like, and that's separate from the fact that like God is still present and loving and kind. Like evil people do evil things.
Right.
So, it's, and it is like a deep thing and it's a hard thing. But there's still hope in God, and we still see God pursue his people all through the ages
Yeah.
in a way that's super beautiful.
Yeah.
And super reconciling. And
Yes.
I love that there's still that piece of like, okay, this is not, even though Israel is a small country, like it's not done
Yep.
for them.
Yep.
No matter who comes up against them.
Right.
And
Right.
God is going to continue to show up for them. And so I think as a country, and but this is a hard time.
Yeah.
This is like,
Yep.
I mean, that doesn't, that phraseology doesn't even do it justice, Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's hard. Just like when I run out of my pumpkin spice latte mix. Like, no, okay, like
No, it's not the same.
yeah, it's not the same. Like, we get that.
We're
like,
fully
we're not
aware.
Yeah, we're not minimizing it at all. Like, it's
Yep.
it's a huge scale.
It's different in that it's like, what was it, 1,500 people were killed in like one day.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it, it's like, yes, Israel is going to retaliate because they are a country and the leaders are there to protect their people.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're going to roll over and be like, oh yeah, come in and slaughter all of us, because that's not right either. And so
No.
standing up for your people, which is what we as Americans would even do too, of like, well, we're not just going to let people just come in here and slaughter us. Like,
right.
that's
yeah.
because we want to preserve life.
And then
Right.
as allies, we can be supportive. Now, like, obviously I'm not, at all able to go assist physically, but I can be an ally in my prayers, to be praying for the people who are affected right now, the families who've been affected, the friends who've been affected, the soldiers who are fighting, the country as they're making decisions. Like, and prayer, I think, is a huge way to be an ally. And then also just being someone who is who's willing to say, like, I support them and I'm standing with them.
Yes.
I'm not going to support terrorists.
Correct.
No matter how you try to
manipulate it to look
like it's like not as bad or somehow justifiable. Like, no, it's not.
Right.
No,
not murdering women and children and civilians.
Right. Because this is like beyond just war of like soldiers in combat. Like, unfortunately, the price of war is that some soldiers are going to die. That's and it's sad and it's unfortunate and it's devastating for the families that are affected. But it is also like they go in knowing. Right. Like this is the cost of that, and the chance of that. But when you talk about going in and bulldozing, people hiding in their safe place that are zero threat to you.
Right.
They're trying to
They
hide
have
from
no
you.
weapons.
They have no weapons. They're in their safe rooms.
Yep.
And you're busting down the door.
And just slaughtering them.
Just to slaughter them.
Yeah. It's
this
definitely
is an atrocity.
Yeah, it's like that is Middle Ages.
And it's evil.
Warfare.
It's evil. Yep. And I might